Good afternoon. The board workshop for July 27, 2017 is now in session. Pam, roll call, please.
Mrs. Belford?
Present.
Mr. Craig?
Present.
Mr. Ziegler?
Present.
Mr. Susan?
Present.
And Ms. Deskovich?
Present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the purpose of this workshop is to receive information and review the status of secondary schools of national prominence, or SSNP. At this time, I am going to turn the workshop over to Dr. Stephanie Sullivan, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Reading and Learning.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Belford, and thank you for school board for having me here today and letting me stand. I did ask Ms. Belford if that would be okay with everyone, because my natural teaching style is going to come out one way or another. I'd like to first introduce my directors, who are a pivotal part of these processes and are going to help us move our students in the right direction. Robin Novelli, Director of Secondary Reading and Learning, Barbara Rodriguez, Director of Secondary Reading and Learning, and Janice Schultz, Director of our Career and Technical Education Programs. So immediately upon walking into this job, I was given the task to identify a couple of things related to SSNP, Secondary Schools of National Prominence, its current relevance, its financial impact, and to review, is this direction we still want to go to in Brevard County? So first, let me give you a little bit of history. Approximately 10 years ago, our school board, our superintendent, and our school leaders at the time put forth a very aggressive series of recommendations to move our secondary schools into an elevated status. As an administrator at the time, I can tell you it was critically important. Our students are having to compete in the workforce, in opportunities for job readiness and other programs where they need an edge. We found the basic minimums for graduation were just not sufficient enough for Brevard Public Schools students, and we wanted to increase their opportunities and their access to resources. That's how it began. So one of my first tasks was to consider, is this still relevant today? Are we still using SSNP? Are we still following its guidelines? Have some of the things become irrelevant? And I really wasn't sure where it was going to go. And I can tell you it went to a really strong place pretty quickly. Something that you might not know is about 5 years ago, we actually changed the name from SSNP, which honestly I didn't know. And so we're bringing it back. If you take a look at the folders in front of you, I dug these out of a strange place in this building, because there are strange places where I found the folders. And it was actually changed to Pathways to College and Career Readiness. And that was about 5 years ago. However, the tenets of SSNP remained the same. It's just a name change, but obviously one that didn't take hold, since most of us weren't familiar with that name change. So for the purpose of this discussion, we are going to refer to it as SSNP and moving forward and using that language. One of the first things I needed to think about was, do we still need this? Do we still need this guiding set of strategies to direct our work? And that is what SSNP is. It's a guiding set of strategies. It helps our principals guide students on the correct pathway. I had an opportunity to attend some wonderful professional development this summer on post-secondary success. And what were some of the key things to think about? And this chart is just incredibly powerful. If we take our students, particularly a low poverty student, a child from birth who enters this world, they enter into childhood full of hopes and dreams. They're not worried that their parents make more or less money. They don't know that there's a label by their name of high poverty. They are ready to enter into the promise of American education. And we know, without question, data tells us that those students are at a dramatic disadvantage. We are losing puddles and buckets and drips and drops of students by the time they get through the education pathway, and very few of them have what the promise of education is all about. Access to jobs, upward mobility, middle class status, if you will, active participation in our society. And the data does not lie. You may have noticed this slide, and it is shocking to me and disheartening to me on so many levels as an avid public education person. If you take a look at these lines, I'm going to highlight the top line and the bottom line. These are our students with a bachelor's degree by age 24 and the status of their family income. Let that sit in for a second. So in 2015, only 9% of students who graduated were in our lowest quartile economically based on their family income. 77% of students, 9% of high poverty students, 77% of top quartile students who enter into college graduate with their degree by 24. Maybe hard to tell by the graph. The note is at the bottom. The gap is actually increasing. The likelihood of a high income graduate has actually become bigger discrepancy, 8 times more likely versus 6 times more likely in 1970. So we've got some concerns there. If you take a look at this graph as well, you're looking at high school completers who enrolled the fall after their high school year in a 2 or 4 year college. This isn't about elite institutions. This is about any 2 or 4 year college, and you can see the enrollment rates by income. Again, that's essentially establishing a lifetime pathway for a child based on the income of their families. Now, we know stories of plenty of people that defy the odds, but the large numbers don't. What's nice is we are seeing an increase to access of students of low income. Ms. Escovich, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Miss D answered that. I'd asked if they were Brevard numbers or national numbers.
These are national numbers. Because again, we have some Brevard numbers coming as well. I wanted to consider the fact that all of our graduates are entering this world after they graduate all over the country. We are part of a national solution for education. So I wanted to show some overall demographics at first, but there are more Brevard specific information coming. There's a huge database of information called the National Survey of College Qualified Students, and they track students for multiple years. Some of these databases actually include students from birth all the way for many years. And they looked at non-college goers, students who chose not to go to college. And we all know that sometimes students claim to be making that choice, but oftentimes that choice was made for them. 80% talk about college cost and aid availability. The primary decision is not to enroll. So in the back of my mind, when I'm looking at these data points, of course I'm considering how can we mitigate all of these issues. I'm on a constant pathway of how can I lower those factors as impacting children in Brevard County. So then to piece it together, you guys know I came from a high school that had a high poverty rate, but globally representing Brevard Public Schools, I looked up every single high school student in Brevard Public Schools. 45% qualify for free and reduced lunch. So we have data telling us that these students have far less access, far less likelihood for success, simply based on the economic status of their family. And when we consider almost half of our high school students are now qualifiers for that key indicator, this is something we have to focus on. And so as I started thinking, is this still relevant? Is it still relevant for us to have a set of strategies to guide our work? I say to myself, okay, should we predetermine their future based on their household income? Because based on the data, I could take a child's, at any age, the income of their family and determine the likelihood. It is without a question the #1 indicator of likelihood, household income for success. Or do we continue? Do we continue to work on it? Is SSMP perfect? Absolutely not. Do we need to revisit, refresh, refocus our schools? 100%. Do we stay on the work to positively impact the trajectory of our students? Because ultimately, graduation is a critical goal, and of course we have to get them to graduation. But I believe we're doing our job when the child has a choice for that very next day. Do they get to choose between options, whether it's a direct career entry, military, or college, or were they trapped on a pathway based on the likelihood of their socioeconomic status. That's something I want to make sure never happens to Brevard Public School students. And so that takes me to what were the initial key components of SSNP a decade ago. And we're going to talk about each of those components and how we can make some adjustments to it with some additional decisions in Brevard County that can help solve some of these achievement gaps. Because it's not just about the lower income student, it's about all of our students having the guidance necessary to succeed. And so you've probably seen these elements before, and we're going to talk about them one at a time. Quickly, within your folder, you only notice a couple of handouts. I'm a tech person, and so everything is in your digital online folder. I sent you all an email, and I'd be happy to provide any additional hard copies of information I'd share if you individually prefer that. Please just let me know. So, how did we get here? I want to highlight some of the elements we did to come to this presentation today. Collaboration is the beginning and end of all good initiatives. Personally, me, my department, our division, we focused a lot on our own professional development and research. It is critical for us to stay current, to us understand the trends that are out there, what's working in programs, what's not working in programs, what colleges expect, what career expects. So we did a lot of work in that area. I apologize, I didn't introduce Paula Bawersi. She is our college and career resource teacher, readiness resource teacher, and she is the brains behind the operation of most of the work that you're actually going to see in a little bit, and is the silent strength behind everything that we do. Paula met with the guidance counselors back in November, and they were already talking about what's working and what's not working. They actually have been meeting annually about some of the components, and we have detailed feedback from the guidance counselors. January through March, we reviewed every bit of data that could possibly be reviewed about Brevard Public Schools students, met with the principals as a result of those reviews, had discussion with them, and if you know our secondary principals, they're not shy, so they were super open with feedback and ideas and discussion points. I'm really excited that we were revisiting it. In April, we did another survey to guidance counselors specifically about the assessment criteria, and I'll share that information with you. And then I'm really excited, in June, I brought together a faculty task force. I invited every single instructional staff member of Brevard Public Schools, invited them to join me along with the BFT officers. All the officers came, and we ended up with a really terrific cross-section of teachers, counselors, ESC specialists, elective teachers, core teachers at this task force. And many of the recommendations that we're making came out of that task force. Even though we had done a lot of work, they pushed me, and we actually changed some of our recommendations based on the feedback of our faculty and staff. So we're really excited about that as well. Obviously, we have our SSNP board workshop today. After today, not sure how it works, but I'm pretty sure you either guide me in the direction to keep forward or tell me to slow down. I intend to have principals work through their school advisory council meetings and share these proposals and information, because in our school advisory council meetings we have parents, we have students, we have community leaders and volunteers. And then I intend to submit a final recommendation along with the student progression plan. And it is again a set of strategies, not a financial commitment per se or any policy change, just a recommendation of strategies that I think it would be a really positive complement to our student progression plan, and submit that in September-ish. You heard that ish, right? We're waiting on the final state guidelines on those legal changes that we heard, so of course we can't proceed without that. I want to give you the general format of what you're looking at and how we're going to go through and talk about these elements. Down here in the corner, you'll see the costs associated with that initiative at the time and how that translates to today. This is a particularly tricky one because this is increased opportunities to earn credit. And this is when Brevard Public Schools went from 6 possible courses for a student in a given day to 7. And at the time, that was a $7.8 million price tag. In today's terms, thank you, Ms. Zerker, this would be a $9.9 million price tag. However, Midway, as you know, teachers went from teaching 5 to 6 periods. So the costs have been primarily mitigated because of some of those changes. At the time, teachers did teach 5 periods out of 7. So I did want to highlight that there for information. Why 7 periods instead of 6? Students need permission to struggle. You know, with 6 periods a day, students would have a possible of 24 credits. The state requires 24 credits to graduate. The state requires many of those 24 credits. So if our students try something that doesn't fit, perhaps they fail a course or get a D in a class, there is no wiggle room in their schedule. It is telling them that from this moment forward, when you enter 9th grade, you better not mess up, because you have one shot and one shot only to earn each of those 24 credits. I think that discomforts probably most people with a bit of common sense. Opportunities for breadth and depth of study. The students that take 3, 4, 5 years of a foreign language, those crazy students who take way more science classes than they're required to because that's where their heart and passion is, are students who are exploring the arts, technology, and sometimes across all those fields. If they didn't have that extra credit, we would be tightly limiting them to the graduation requirements. And of course, it frees up the schedule for students to begin their adult life with credit. When we look at students who succeed in post-secondary educational opportunities, those who have had experience with the level of curriculum and dual enrollment in particular, working with registrars and professors and offices, that really helps them begin their journey. And for those that want to enter the workforce, their ability to take 3, 4, 5, 6 years of a course to where they can actually be competitive. It's really easy to say, oh, this person took a few career classes, they're going to get a high-paying job. That's not reality. Our students who immerse themselves in career technical education classes do have that opportunity. For example, some of the auto body students I've worked with, their senior year, they are finishing level 6 of a course. That's allowing them for a record of performance that allows them to enter the